today we are going to talk about Volcom, Billabong, Quiksilver, and actually a couple of other brands as well. These are all brands you've heard of?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar. I'm hip with it. I'm hip with it.
Wow, big into skate and surf culture, huh?
Well, I bought a bathing suit from some of those brands.
Nice, nice. The reason we're talking about them is because this headline about 2 weeks ago hit major news networks all over the country, actually all over the world, that Billabong, Quiksilver, Volcom are closing after their operator files for bankruptcy. The LA Times also said pretty much the same thing, and Fortune magazine went so far as to declare that 1,400 employees are going to be laid off as well. So, if you're reading these headlines, as many surfers, skaters, people across the world were reading them, what would you assume is going to happen to Volcom, Billabong, and Quiksilver brands?
They're dead.
The Grim Reaper has come.
Oh.
But, in fact, they are not dead. Volcom, in particular, is declaring a live we ride on Instagram. We are not dead. They posted this about 4 or 5 days ago. Billabong, we are not going anywhere. And Quiksilver went with what you see in the water means more than what you see in the news. So they are also not going anywhere.
I guess that's apropos.
I mean, it makes sense, I guess. But yeah, so what's going on? A little weird.
This is a lesson in bad PR. Or maybe good PR, because here we are all wondering, but like, if you know anything about communicating anything, you don't do it like this, where it's like, hello, everyone is closing, and then you respond and say, actually we're not, but we're not going to tell you anything about why you think we're closing or why we're going to tell you we're staying alive.
Well, there are a couple different ways you can look at that. I'm going to tell you why they're closing, because it is interesting.
Thank heavens.
And it turns out the business model of these brands is actually quite complex.
Even though they're all the same?
Even though they're very similar, yes. It's more of the way that they're structured. It is not the PR of the brands. It actually looks like it's bad journalism.
Clickbait.
Yeah, exactly. It's made to look like, oh my gosh, they're going out of business, but they're not.
I'd be pissed if I were these guys. It'll hurt reputation, it'll hurt sales. Whoever the person working with the journalist was, like, bad move.
The reason we care, as people who comment on skateboarding and things around skateboarding.
Yeah, you know us.
One, some small retailers did get kind of hurt in this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But more broadly, I think that there is some warning signs as far as like general skate culture goes, and it being a little bit at risk with kind of the underworkings of what's going on here. There are several skate brands involved. I know the headlines had Volcom, Billabong, Quiksilver, but Ruka is also kind of involved in this mix. DC Shoes are, and Element Skateboards as well. The entity that actually went out of business is a company called Liberated Brands. And on February 3rd, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They said in their note that they are in the process of transitioning brand licenses to new license holders as part of a management transition. They will be liquidating 100 plus retail locations and then closing them. And this filing does not impact the future of the brands, most importantly. So,
what's going on here?
What's going on? So, Liberated Brands was formed in 2019. And it was formed when Volcom, which was owned by Kering at the time, and Kering is a luxury brand that owns Balenciaga, they own Gucci, a couple others you'd probably recognize.
Gucci, Fendi.
Authentic Brands Group bought Volcom from Kering. And when they did that, the Volcom management team took a majority stake in a new entity called Liberated Brands, and they are going to remain the operators of Volcom within the US. Also, ABG, Authentic Brands, the company that bought Volcom, is going to have a minority stake in Liberated Brands, which is the newly formed operating company.
Okay, am I understanding this? ABG created a layer between them and Volcom Brands to manage Volcom, and Volcom has a majority stake in this middle layer for US only, and ABG has a minority stake because of Volcom being in their portfolio. What
you said was, as per my understanding, correct, except you said Volcom has a majority stake, and it's not Volcom, it is the executives from Volcom that have this majority stake in Liberated. Volcom, as far as a brand, its trademarks, its IP, is now owned by Authentic.
And the Volcom execs own a part of the Liberated Brands.
The Volcom execs became Liberated Brands. As I didn't put it in here because it was hearsay, but I have read on message boards that this transition was basically how the Volcom leadership team kept their job and made an agreement with Authentic that they could keep doing like the operating stuff that they're good at, and Authentic is now going to do like basically the marketing and brand strategy stuff.
Interesting. And confusing.
Yes, very much so. So let's keep going.
Yeah.
So exactly what Liberated Brands is they are the licensee and operating partner for Volcom. And so what this means is they operated in the US all wholesale for Volcom. Okay. So every surf shop or skate shop that's independently owned that carries Volcom, they are Liberated Brands is the one
managing,
fulfilling those wholesale purchases. They also manage the retail, so any Volcom store is owned by Liberated Brands. Okay. And they manage e-commerce. So if you buy direct to consumer on the Volcom site, it's also Liberated Brands. Okay. And they have licensed this right to do that, so they are paying Authentic to be able to use Authentic's IP, which is Volcom. So this started in 2019. Okay. And quickly thereafter, they added Spider, which is also Spider is also an Authentic brand.
Interesting.
And Liberated started doing the same stuff for them. Then in 2023, there was a massive consolidation of brands in like this surf category. Okay. And so Boardriders was purchased by Authentic, and Boardriders was bought for $1.2 billion. And that included the logos Billabong, Quiksilver, DC Shoes, Honolulu Surf, Von Zipper, Roxy, Element, Ruka, and Boardriders. And as part of that deal, so we're still in September 2023, as part of that deal, Liberated is going to be the licensee to take on wholesale for Billabong, Honolulu, and Ruka in the US. They're going to take on e-commerce and retail for Billabong, Honolulu, Quiksilver, Roxy, Ruka, and Boardriders. Yep. And then they're also going to take over all those brands in some parts of Asia and Australia. And then they also do wetsuits for Quiksilver, Roxy, and Ruka within the US, or within North America. The gaps where you're seeing here, so like DC Shoes you don't see. Yeah. Footwear, Authentic will often find a different partner who specializes in footwear. Okay. And so DC is being, the licensee is not Liberated, it's someone else.
So is Authentic Brands Group just like a PE, like private equity?
They are not explicitly private equity. We will get there.
But what it sounds like so far, and tell me if I'm wrong, is they just bought it and now they're outsourcing all of the operations.
Correct. So that's what Liberated's doing. But it really only lasted for like a year after that big acquisition by Authentic, because in December 2024, Authentic decided to pull all the licenses from Liberated because they said, you guys don't have enough resources to invest in doing a good job at this. And then 2 months later, Liberated files for bankruptcy.
Interesting.
So that kind of makes sense.
So basically, December 2025, 15 months after giving all of these brands and responsibilities to Liberated Brands, it says, you're not doing a good enough job, so we're going to take it back.
We're going to find different partners to give these licenses to instead.
Yeah, we're taking our brands out of your operations.
Correct.
Interesting. They kind of created the Liberated Brands themselves.
Yeah, and owned a minority stake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, we talked about some small business owners that were kind of hurt during this.
Yeah.
Kind of two things happened. One, not all Billabong stores or branded stores were owned by corporate. So, for example, there were some individuals like this guy who owns a Billabong store, but that's not owned by Liberated. Liberated is shutting down Liberated-owned Billabong stores, which is most of them.
Yeah.
But not all of them. So guys like this are just fielding calls constantly from customers thinking they're going out of business.
Everything must be on sale.
What happens to my gift cards?
Yep.
things like that. So they've had a hectic day at work. The other big deal is that in liquidating all of these goods, they are now selling 60% off site-wide. If you want to get 60% off on Volcom right now, or Ruka, or any of these companies, you can. The problem is, let's say you've got a wetsuit that you sell to a surf shop for $100, and that surf shop sells it for $200. Well, now that wetsuit is $90. Or no, that wetsuit's $80 online. And you already paid $100 to get this wetsuit. So
What are you doing?
Well, customers are going to buy it online. You look like an idiot for pricing it too high, and you're just kind of screwed and have to eat dead inventory. So, not great for small businesses with this situation.
Oh, man.
So let's talk a little bit more about Authentic as a company.
Okay.
They were founded in 2010, and they were founded by this guy, Jamie Salter, who's the CEO.
He looks like he pretends to surf.
Well, he actually does have an action sports background.
Okay.
He founded Ride Snowboards in 1992, and Ride is still around. He actually led a $6 million IPO of Ride Snowboards in 94, and that was the first public snowboard company. Then he went to go work in PE, and he founded Authentic Brands in 2010.
Okay.
He was on a podcast, the Effin' Rad Snowboard podcast. This was when I was just trying to figure out his reputation in the action sports world, because he is a billionaire.
Got it.
And he was on this podcast a couple of years ago, and I just read some of the comments, and it doesn't seem like he has the greatest reputation in snowboarding. Right? Like, clearly the podcast itself was aware of complaints that people had against him. And then they said in a different comment, pro riders seemed to say, hey, things disappeared when he bought companies that they ride for. He was always the money guy. So I think that is conflicting. It's conflicting worlds, right? If you're the money guy, it's hard to do action sports, but whether that's right or not, that probably comes down to an individual level and what exactly he did. But that is who founded Authentic Brands. But what they're doing is, well, what they say they do is that they are a unified platform integrating M&A, brand strategy, creativity, and digital innovation. They do storytelling and compelling content and, things to help all their brands. But
it's such a word salad.
It is a word salad, but they've been killing it.
Oh.
In 15 years, they have become the biggest brand licensing company. Their brands are in 150 countries, 13,000 stores, and their brands do $32 billion in global sales. So at their core, they are a brand management and licensing company. And this is becoming more common for fashion and apparel, where you have these brand management groups and then they license all their assets out to people who are actually fulfilling or operating the companies. What they do is they buy distressed brands. Over the last 15 years, we have seen all these stories of brands going out of business. They are just scooping these brands up that are valuable brands but need operating help. And then what they do is they license that brand out to a partner to operate, such as Liberated Brands. I believe they have like 1,400, no, they have several hundred partners.
Yeah.
So it's a huge network. And they do the marketing and brand strategy for the brands, and then the partner kind of does everything else. Their CMO said, our unofficial motto is that we are a advertising agency that happens to own brands.
Okay.
And they own a ton of brands you would recognize. In fact, I'd argue it's hard to find one you don't know out of brands that Authentic owns. And some of them, they own just the person's name and likeness. So for example, the Shaquille O'Neal name and likeness is owned by Authentic. And they're the ones that can license that out, not Shaq. They have a ton of brands that you've heard of, that you use.
That's crazy. I know we're not talking about this right now, but it would be really interesting to understand how the name and likeness works.
As you alluded to earlier, PE is in the mix. Authentic Brands themselves are not private equity. However, private equity is who backs Authentic Brands. Authentic Brands has talked about IPOing. They talked about it in 2021 and said they did a private round where they got like a $13 billion valuation, and I think private equity bought like 25% of it through that. and then they pushed out an IPO date to 23 or 24. They're still not public though, so I don't know what the plan is really. And like I said, they are killing it. Like they have quickly become the biggest company doing this, and they've only been around for 15 years.
Fascinating.
So
where do
we go from here? To have this layer of structure in how these companies are set up, it's so different than how they were formed originally in the skate, surf, or snowboard cultures. Going back to what I said earlier about like, what does this mean for skate culture more broadly? Volcom started in the 90s on a Tahoe snowboard trip, and Quiksilver popped up in the 70s from some Australian surfers that were making board shorts. These brands inherently understood, one, how to reinvest in those cultures through events, teams, videos, etc. And two, they understood why investing in those cultures is important. As these brands are sold off and gobbled up, they're going to get further and further removed from those cultures. And on top of that, this process gives these brands a lot more financial stakeholders. And whether that be private equity or whether that be public companies like Nike, those financial stakeholders don't care about the culture. Their investment in the brand is strictly a financial one. Those financial stakeholders also really don't like risk. In fact, they want to mitigate risk. And skateboarding in particular has a lot of risk for brands. One, it's kind of questionable legality in various places. And two, there's a very real chance of injury, especially if you're investing a ton in athletes to perform and put marketing campaigns behind.
Is that Corey Duffel?
Yeah, that is Corey Duffel.
That's right.
Nice.
That's right. Nice. I'm hip with it. Part 2.
It's only a matter of time before some of those in charge start to look at those factors and are tempted to invest in the predictability of contest skating and athlete-first skateboarders. It isn't inconceivable that a major sponsor signing a top contest pro might request in the contract no street skating.
Oh, to minimize injury.
Yeah.
Is that something that's like in other pro athlete contracts?
Yes, like pro athletes absolutely have restrictions on what they are and aren't allowed to do.
Oh man, so like you might not be allowed to go scuba diving on vacation with your family.
Yeah. From a skater perspective, that's scary. But the good news is we're not quite at that point yet. And I actually don't think all corporate-backed brands are bad for skateboarding. For example, Carhartt, Dickies, Yeti have all done a really good job of investing in the culture.
Wait.
They are filming videos, they have teams, they are putting on events, they're even hiring skateboarders to work at their companies.
Yeti has a skate team?
Yeti is doing a decent job. Like they have...
Sponsor me.
That's the thing, they have a legit team. Like
that's
it's not
crazy.
Yeah, it's not like they're gonna give you stuff just because you have an Instagram following. They have a real team, like a respectable team.
I wasn't acting like I have a big enough following to just get stuff. I'm just a big Yeti product fan.
Okay, well, maybe somebody else.
And I'd take the sponsorship, so.
Yeah, but no, they're doing a good job. What we can do as skaters is keep putting pressure on, one, these brands to keep doing what they're doing, and two, other brands coming into the space to actually invest in this culture. If they're hiring skaters, if they're paying team riders, if they're putting on events, that is good for all of us. The other thing you can do though is you can contribute to skate culture. Go film a video, go have video premieres, go attend video premieres when they pop up, build a DIY, build stuff, and put on events. Just do something.
Oh, I love the call to action.
Yeah, I thought, otherwise it's just like corporate doom. I can't leave.
Doom and gloom. Yeah, okay, so I mean, I think this is a very nice call to action. Get out there and hang with the homies.
Yeah, thanks, Em.
Yeah, you're welcome. Get out there. Keep the culture alive. Find your own identity. And don't let the big guy win. Like that? Was that too much?
No, you did great. Wonderful PSA.
Listen up, folks.
Let's end this video.
Okay.